Alright everyone, please settle down. Class is in session. My name is TJ and I will be your lecturer for today. It's been a fair old wait for this video and that's honestly down to me. I've been on holiday for most of July, but back in the classroom and it's sort of the start of a new term. So we're going to hit the ground running and talk about Brightmarsh for our next map breakdown. As with these lectures, we break down the map layout. We explain how to effectively capture the point, some general positioning tips as well. We then look at how to attack and defend the payload push, where you should be setting up, where you should be looking to apply pressure, depending on which side of the payload push you're on. And at the end, we talk about some general tips and tricks for this map, as well as the recommended champions. Timestamps are below in the description if you wish to skip to a certain section. Before we start, a huge shout out to FaladeYT, who has helped me with the recording of this video and also being able to bounce some ideas off him and get his experiences. He is the support player for the PCL team Aeromana, and yeah, he plays at a much higher MMR, higher level of play than I do. So to have his experiences on this map as well has been really great, and I hope you benefit from that as well. He also has a YouTube channel which he's back to uploading content for, and it's really awesome. So please check it out. The link is in the description. So without further ado, let's get started. Open beta patch 49 was officially called the Forest Call and was released on May 3rd, 2017. And it's kind of weird to me to think about that, how this map is over 2 years old, as it was the first new map release that I experienced when I started playing on PS4. And yeah, I've been playing this game for a while. So within the patch notes, Brightmarsh is described as, in quotations, an exotic, colourful setting with lots of interesting spaces, taking the idea of a marsh but making it feel lived in and giving it character with bright, cheerful lighting really lends itself well to creating an aesthetically unique map, as well as having a, air quotes, tug-of-war style of fighting. So we're going to see how that description holds up as we look at the map layout. So, the map layout of Brightmarsh. As with all of the other maps, this is a 3-lane siege map mirrored down the middle. What I mean by that is any annotations I do on one side, you need only flip over and apply to the other. It depends on which side of the map you spawn. So my annotations, we're going to go from the left-hand side as if you spawn over here. So you have the houses on the left-hand side and then the docks to your right-hand side. The 3 lanes of Brightmarsh. Lane number 1, as you come out of spawn, you follow the main road. All the way up here into the point house. That's lane number 1. Number 2, you take a left and you go through the houses, and you can go through the door in front of you to the point house like that, or you can go around out the back door towards the points. That's lane number 2. And finally, lane number 3 is we want to go up these stairs through the gardens and onto the dock, where you can drop down and go through the point like so. They are the 3 lanes and the 3 main routes of travel around Brightmarsh. So there are 2 areas that I want to talk about in regards to the point fight. And that is the dock area and also the houses at the top. So the docks are this area just in front of the environmental hazard. Well, it's a dock. So in order to control the area, you need to have someone positioned on this high ground where the stairs are next to your point house. And the idea is that they can shoot down onto anyone on the enemy team who is standing over here or wants to move around. You pretty much hold them halfway. There is a door down at the bottom. You do not want to let anyone go through that door unhindered, otherwise you lose control of the point fight, and then they can influence the fight on the point and you have to loop round to try and get to them, and that could cost you the point in of itself. So to hold the area, you just need to make sure you have someone up here watching down here at all times, and if someone does make it through, they have to quickly rotate over to the window to try and make up for the extra person who is now on the point. So if you want to completely flank around this area, the key to it is going to be going from this high ground and actually getting over onto the other. As soon as you're over here, you can shoot down onto anyone who is positioned in the back line. You can flank around the gardens and do the same over here, or even drop down and pincer like so. And what happens here, if you do complete this flank, you completely surround the enemy team. The point house is very open, not so much cover, and all of a sudden, whoever's on the point is just going to be eviscerated if you play it correctly. So that's how you control the dock and also how you flank around it. Similarly, at the top in the houses, so to control the courtyard area, the courtyard being this back area here. Very secluded, very a lot of cover around it, and it's quite, in comparison with the docks, it's quite far away. Most of the action is going to take place pretty much over here, fighting between the houses and also going into the point itself. So to control the courtyard, what you need to do is you need to have control over your own houses. So having someone inside the house shooting out the door into the opposition house is a really good way of doing it. Also having someone positioned here outside, or maybe even on this top ridge, which I'll talk about a lot more in the practical side of the video, able to shoot down into the courtyard. That's how to hold it. The flank route for it, you're here, same with the docks, get into the other team's house. When you're there, there is a window here, you can shoot down into the back line, you can flank around there, very similar to the dock, and it has the same effect. You surround the enemy team, you pincer them, and get some quick kills, and also, well, complete the flank. So, that's how you hold the courtyard area, that's how you hold the dock area. If you complete just one of them flank routes, and you do it successfully, you pretty much win that point fight, because, as I say, you surround the enemy team, you pick off whoever's contesting the points, and then it's a domino effect from there on out. Let's look at some positioning tips. So front lines, generally speaking, you're going to be on the point. If you're playing a more aggressive front line, then you might be traveling out here and helping out in the fight with the courtyard. This is mainly if you're running 2 front lines, which I recommend in most cases. But so your defensive front line, your point tank would stay on points, the aggressive one will be out here affecting the fight in the courtyard. With the point house though, you don't have much cover, so if you want help from your support, you have to either retreat out of the house itself, or you go down these stairs, which I don't normally recommend because your support would have to loop all the way around to try and get to you. So only use these stairs if you have control of the dock area. Your damage dealers, there are 2 main locations that I want you guys to be sitting at. So high ground at the docks and here inside the house. It doesn't really matter if you're hit scan or blaster. In my opinion, blasters excel up here on the docks, because when you are shooting down onto the point through this window, you have AoE going onto the point. There's possibly going to be 1 or 2 people over there, so you're going to get a lot more value out of your AoE shots. And in the houses, the hit scan, you have the range, so you can shoot into the other house without much hindrance. You can draw a line of sight down there, you can shoot onto whoever's up here on the ledge, or you can shoot down through this ledge if people push forward on the docks. So hit scan really does excel here, and blaster excel here, but you can make a case for either. I mean, blasters can be in here because if you're shooting into the houses or into the courtyard, people are going to be naturally grouped up, so you're still getting value out of your blasters. And hit scan, you've got the range onto docks, so you can play it pretty much either way. Supports, you guys are staying out of trouble. Most of the time, you're going to be chilling on this corner here, just in front of the house, and just to the side of the window. And this means that you can get healing onto the point. You can rotate over and get healing towards anyone over here on the courtyard or in the houses. And also you can help out your damage dealer or whoever is up here trying to contest the docks. Your way out if things get too busy would be, so you get pressured out, you go up the stairs into the gardens. That's got a lot more cover, so you can be a lot more safe. You can even drop even further down if you have to make a full retreat from the point fight. So just stay out of trouble, focus on healing your front lines, and dish out healing to whoever needs it, the rest of your team as the point goes on. And you're not really going to go wrong there as a support. That's what I want you guys to do. Your flanks, well, there are 2 main flank routes. The thing with Brightmarsh is that you don't necessarily need vertical mobility to excel on this map. It does help, of course, it will help with every other map, but I think Brightmarsh is one of the maps where you really don't need it. So you can make a lot of argument for running other flanks such as Talus, Koga, Lex, Sky. You can all make that argument for. So the flank routes around the point house are around the docks. So you can flank around there, get onto this position, shoot down as we've covered before, get a pick onto that support. Or the alternate one is this long flank route around the back and going into the houses that way and influencing the fight around the courtyard. So you don't need vertical mobility to do any of these flanks because, well, you have stairs to go up if you don't have any dashes or you don't have any flight. So they're going to be your main flank routes around this map. That's going to cover it for this side of the map. Looking at the map layout, we're now going to throw it over to the practical session, and we're going to see how these translate into game. And here we are in Brightmarsh on the actual game map. So let's look at the lanes. Lane number 1, following the main roads, winding all the way through here, and boom, you are in the point house. That is lane number 1. So lane number 2 is we're going to take a left here out of spawn. We're going to go through these houses. You could go the long way around through this door, but to get to the point, you go out this one. You're in this courtyard area, and the point is just here. That is lane number 2. And finally, in lane number 3, so we're going to go to the right this time, keeping to the environmental hazard side on the right, through the high gardens, and now we are at the docks. So you can drop down here or go down the stairs, however you want to do it. But you walk through here to the point, and that is lane number 3. So one of the 2 areas that you're looking to control for the point and fight is going to be the docks. And as said in the theory video, the key is basically to have someone pretty much stand on these stairs on the high ground. Because what you can do is you can go down to this window, you can shoot down onto the points, so do whatever you need to do, shoot over here. But also, you are able to see anyone coming in from the dock side. And as long as you can stop people coming through this door, you basically make this entire section pretty much null and void. So if you're going to control the docks, this is basically all you need to do to hold it. Of course, if you can get onto their high ground, look at this, straight down onto their backline, you can move forward further on through here. You could even start attacking straight from behind, jump up to here. There's a lot of options that you can do if you do complete this entire flank. And I'm not just talking about one person. If the entire team does this, this is the options that you have available. And as we know from the point house, you've not got many ways to go if you're stuck inside it. Okay, so here is the other point that you want to control, the courtyard area. And as we highlighted, what you want to hold are these houses. So if you hold this house, you are able to first of all shoot onto the point, kinda like if the front line is able to move towards your line of vision, you can do that. Shoot onto the back line, you can shoot into these houses, and you also have complete knowledge over this area. So if anyone is trying to go onto this high balcony, or anyone's trying to make this flank around here, you have a lot of knowledge available to you. So if you do the flank route, then obviously if you can get into here in the opposition's house, you can just stand in this window and, well, would you look here, you have a complete free line of fire onto the enemy backline, wherever they may be. If their support is up here or their Makoa's standing on top of a fence, you know, you've got complete free fire onto them. You can also carry this on, go all the way around if you wish. And then once again, as with the docks, you are behind the enemy team. So these are the 2 main flank routes and how to actually break the initial point fight. So let's look at positioning. So front lines, generally speaking, you are going to be in here in the point fight house. So your point tank is, well, as the name suggests, going to be chilling on the points. You're the more aggressive type. You're actually, I would recommend going down here and using this wolf cover, so you can help out the damage dealers fighting for this control of the area for the courtyard. If your point tank needs help, you can just go back through the door here to help out. Or if you need to retreat, you can just, well, piece the scene this way and get back to your support. So that's pretty much where frontline's going to be for the main point fights. So damage dealers, I spoke about 2 really key areas in the theory section for where you want to be, and well, this is what they look like in game. So number 1 is here by this window, shooting onto the point. You can shoot down over here if anyone tries to flank or get into the house. You have overlook on the docks as well, so you can shoot down here, and it's just really great. You have a out as well if you get pushed out, so you can go through the high grounds, jump down here and get back towards your spawn into safety. So that's the first area, and then the second one is going to be down here, which you highlighted earlier, pretty much standing kind of on this circle really, and you have all the advantages of shooting down here. So if you're mainly battling out for the control of the houses, you're going to love these 2 houses. So as a damage dealer, this is mainly where you're going to be, because it's just so much cover, and it's also really easy for the support to get to you. Okay, supports, my friends. Well, what do I always say about supports? Stay out of trouble, focus on healing. So your support players, you're going to really love this corner right now. So you're able to heal anyone on the fighting on the points. You can heal your damage dealers if they're in the house or up here on the docks. You can even move back here to maybe get a bit of fire around through the window and get some of that cover. You do have your escape as well, which will also be through the high gardens. So as long as you can keep out of trouble and just focus on healing, you're going to be doing an absolutely fantastic job on support. Finally, the flanks. So the thing about Brightmarsh is, as highlighted, it's very flat right now, so you don't need flight in order to succeed on this map. So the two main flank routes we spoke about a little earlier would be on the docks. So as a flank, if you can go in through this door and you can affect the fight on the point, or you can even go up the wall, these stairs, to go into their backline. Of course, having some vertical mobility does help just for moving around, but that's just for any map in general. So that's the first flank route. And going down here as well, the opposite ends would be to take this slightly longer route, go through this door, coming around here. It's very isolated. You have a lot of cover, and unless someone is standing there watching this flank, this sometimes goes unnoticed by some players. So if you do get the jump, you're straight into this house here, and as we said before, free firing onto that point, or even continuing around to this side, do the exact same thing. These are the two main flank routes for the point and fight. So one final part before we go back into the theory part of this video for section 3.0 is this. I wanted to talk about the high ground ledges. So you would have seen me earlier on in this video, especially on the practical section, where I jump onto these ledges just playing as Androxus. So I wanted to give a specific section dedicated to it. So if you have any form of horizontal dash, so I'm thinking Ruckus, for instance, you can stand there and horizontal dash and actually land on this ledge. As soon as you're up here, you have high ground, and I've spoken about it more than enough. You can shoot down onto the courtyard here, you can force round even more, get some damage onto whoever's in the enemy backline over there. Be warned that you don't have that much cover, so you're gonna have to stick to the corners for your main source of cover. And yeah, so it's very high risk, high reward. There is another high ground spot over here. You land on these houses, and again, similar to before, but this time you don't have that much cover. You have to rely on the ledge to actually give you any form of cover whatsoever. More options for you to use in your games. And that's going to wrap it up for the practical side. We'll throw it back to the theory. The payload has been captured and the push is on. We're going to look at 2 choke points and the last line of defense. What do I mean by a choke point? A choke point is a point on the map where the payload cart has to move through a very narrow and confined area, or it has to make a 90-degree turn along its route to the conversion point. Brightmarsh is a small and narrow map, so the first choke point is right outside of the point house here. So defenders, you want to set up in 2 areas. One is the high gardens over here, and the other is inside this house right now. Both these areas are really important. At minimum, you need to have 1 person cover each, with the support healing the front line, which is going to be contesting the point here. So your support is going to be back here, so you can heal there and there. You're going to have 1 extra person, so they will need to rotate to either help out with the houses or the gardens. These areas are important because of just the cover. There's a lot of walls around them. It's very compact. The houses especially, you have a number of windows as well for you to shoot out of if you hold it, and that means that any attackers that are contesting the point obviously will take damage from these locations. For attackers, you need to break through this line, and in a 5v5 fight this is going to be very tricky, especially if the defenders are in a solid position, they're fully set up, or they're ahead of you on items. So the best thing to do is utilize a numbers advantage. Chances are when you capture the point, you're going to have some defenders out of position from when that initial point was captured, so you need to eliminate them as quickly as possible, so when the point cart makes its way to this location, you have a numbers advantage and you can keep that momentum going. If there was an optimal place for you to break through, I would consider trying to get control of the high gardens here. So that would be directed resources up over here and try and break through this line. And the reason is it'll be the exact same reason that the defenders have, is that this area gives you the cover. Over here, if you set up, you can shoot onto the payload, which is going to be around about here. and it also means you can get damage onto the backline, your support, or any damage dealers that are going to be hiding behind this wall here. And you can shoot also, if you're over here, you can put pressure onto the houses themselves. This is actually just a really solid position for the attackers to base their defense on. The attack off, because a lot of the fighting does take place around the houses. That's just how the map is designed, but controlling this location is going to give you a significant advantage when we look at the second choke point. The second choke point is located just before this archway here. Now for defenders, where you're setting up, you need to hold these houses for as long as possible, but by the time the cart reaches around here, you're going to be pushed back pretty much to this doorway. So you want to hold this location, this alleyway, for as long as possible, and then fall back into this large building here. Once you're inside this building, it can be very difficult for an attacking team to force you out of it. This is a very enclosed location. You have one way in from there, the way in from the road, and also these steps at the back. You have the two windows as well to shoot out of. So just here, it's very difficult for the attacking team to break through, especially when they're going to be pushing forward from the houses that they've just taken control of, and also here pushing through. You pretty much are able to stop their advance because you can shoot out this window straight onto that point. So this is pretty much where defenders are going to be, and also you will be contesting the point. Your support and your damage is going to be back here, and probably going to have a DPS back here as well, shooting down. So this is pretty much how the defenders will set up. This is very much the optimal way of doing it. So attackers, I highlighted the high gardens as the way that you want to break this positioning, right? So here is why. If you control the high gardens for this second choke point, you're able to shoot down onto whoever is contesting the payload. You have a lot of cover to hide behind, and you also guarantee control of this wall here, so you can push around further forward. And just by moving the cart to this position, you gain natural control of these of the houses. The defenders have to move out to try and get a better position to defend, so you can, well, pretty much go straight in and make yourself comfortable in and amongst the cover. So all of that pretty much by the cover fire from these houses, and able to shoot down and put pressure on the defenders. Using this as the first step, you can apply pressure onto this house and ultimately allow yourself to move even further forward, pushing the defenders back. Now, one thing I do want to bring to the attention is this building here. Attackers, I only want you to move down when you have complete control over the defenders, when they make a retreat. If you move into this building too early, it's a very small, very confined location. So a defending team, especially if they have blasters, you're shooting fish in a barrel if you're an attacker stuck in this building, and you have to pretty much, do a U-turn and go straight back up to get out there. And then you are out of the fight for a few seconds. So only push forward through this building when you have the advantage. Once you do, you're able to push around here, and also maybe look to move into this building for cover and use this wall, and then we start getting towards that last line of defense. In conclusion, I know I've got a lot of arrows on the board, so just as a quick TLDR, defenders, stay in this house, hold it as long as possible, try and prevent the attackers moving from this location, fire onto the points here, and also mount your defense around here. Attackers, use the high gardens as the point to start your attack. Fire down onto the point, force the defenders to take cover, and whilst that is happening, whoever's contesting the point, and you can also start pushing through these houses and start to challenge this area of the building. As soon as the cart passes under this archway, the defenders really have to fully retreat out of this building, otherwise they can get completely pincered. The last line of defense, when the payload cart is just about to be converted. Now defenders, if you've played Stone Keep and Ascension Peak, then you are going to be very accustomed to this style of defense. You have got your backs against the wall next to your spawn, and you don't really have any other way of going down. So you have a high balcony, and then you have your spawn over here. So defenders, if you're backline damage and you are a support, you stay up here. use these silos for your cover. Big, bulky objects that will take you out of enemy fire if you do need to get some healing. But the crux of this entire defense is whoever's down on a point contesting, you just throw as much fire as you can from your high ground positions or wherever you are, and just force the attackers back. Now, one thing I see some people do is they drop down too early right now, because you have high ground control. Why would you want to give this up in a fight? So the rule that I would like you to follow is, if you are in a 5 versus 5 fight where everyone is up, do not drop down. If you are a backline damage or a support, let your front line soak up the damage and you just help them out from the top. Only drop down if you have an advantage over the attackers. So let's say you pick off 2 attackers, you take out a front line, or you take out 1 less supports, and then you have a 5 versus 3 fight. By all means, drop down from your position and push them back even further, and try and mount up your defense in these positions once again, as you did do in the second choke points. Of course, this wastes a lot of time for the attackers as they have to regroup and come back around and fight through the second choke point again, essentially. So that's the advice. And also, the only other time you would drop down is if you are in a free situation. Literally, if this point makes onto the point you lose the entire game, then by all means go for the Hail Mary play. I'm just saying that it's not going to be worth you throwing your life away if it's, you know, a 1-0 or it's a 2-1 or whatever. It's not worth it. Just let the point fight go. Let the point go for it. It's not worth throwing your life away for it. So only jump down when you have the advantage over the attackers. Attackers, well, I'll give you credit. You've done well so far. You've got the payload through 2 pretty difficult choke points, and now it is just this final bit. And I'm not going to lie, it can be quite difficult for you, as the defenders are, well, up here shooting down onto the point. So the attackers, you're finally able to push into this house. You can push forward up here. You'll be contesting the point, also utilizing these walls. So you do have cover available to you to sit back and fire up onto the attackers. But unless you have a way of getting up onto that high ground, it's going to be very difficult to move them. So there are the most general way I can advise doing this is to coordinate your fire. So as your DPSs and your support and even your front lines fire up onto the high ground, as soon as the backline damage and the support from the defenders, as soon as they have to back away into cover, either they go behind these silos or they go into the spawn itself, then focus everything onto those front lines. If you burn through the front lines, you basically say to the defenders, the only way you're contesting this point is if you drop down, and if you drop down, we're going to murder you. So that's what you have to do. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be really difficult. So if you're able to save as much time as you can when you push the payload through all of this location, this is a really strong position for you to build on. There is another way of getting onto the high ground. So if you have vertical mobility, same with Stonekeeper and Ascension Peak, if you're able to get onto this balcony from here or here or here or however you want to do it, defenders either die or go back into spawn. Well, they're going to spawn regardless anyway. Game over for the defense. That's an easy push for you. If you can't get up here and you have a form of flight or vertical mobility, then there is a super sneaky way of doing it. And I will go into more detail when we look in game. There is another flank route, and you're wondering what on earth is this area, right? So you have the alleyway between the houses and this location, and a barrier here. This is an environmental hazard. If you have flight, jump off the balcony and you can fly all the way around, and you actually land on top of their high ground here. And, well, you have someone on the high ground. This is going to be, you know, your flanks or your DPSs. So people, champions that can do this, Drogos, Willow, Androxus, Eevee, flight champions basically can go straight around here, land up here, and then cause absolute chaos. Your defenders are now going to be like, hang on, we either shoot down or we shoot the person that's trying to murder us. So they'll turn their attention to you. The people down on the ground can then start pushing the payload even further forward, focus down front lines. Simple as that. It can fall apart rapidly if you get someone up on its high ground. And that's one way you can do if you have the ability to do so. That's going to wrap it up for the theory for this section. We're going to go into game. I'm going to show you all of these locations, how they're important, and also explain this flank route as well. and we'll see how this translates into game. So the objective has been captured and the push is on. So the very first choke point is when it just comes out of the house and gets to around about this corner thereabouts. You're going to be escorted by an ulting Makoa. So defensive positions, you have 2 places you need to hold. This first one is the high gardens, this area. So as long as you control this part of the map, you can shoot down onto anyone contesting the payload. You can push around here, stop people going through the docks, and pushing up here as well. So this is a really crucial area for defenders to hold. On the other side, you need someone watching these houses. A lot of the action in this very first choke point takes place around the houses generally. So you have your front lines contesting the points around here, and then your attackers will be trying to push through this house. So defenders hold this as long as possible as well. It's very difficult. It's kind of, you are split between 2 sides that you need to hold, but the important part for this choke point is not losing the gardens, and the houses are more important for the second choke point, but we'll get to that to the later date. So attackers, you can force through the houses and then you can flank around here and get control of the point one way. That's perfectly fine, but hear me out. My recommendation is actually to get control of the high gardens. You can push through here, so when that car actually makes it past this archway, you can push defenders back, and then you can stand here, and all of a sudden it's going to make the defense around the house a lot more difficult, because the defenders, well, you can shoot onto them and you can shoot into the house and also push forward from that point as well. So that's my recommendation for this very first choke point. Let's get to the second one. So the second payloads right now. So defenders, this is the house I was on about. This is where you form the crux of your defense. You need to hold on to these houses as long as possible and try and keep hold of this little alleyway, because as long as you hold it, the attacking team really can't push up past this point. So why do I like this house? Well, you've got the windows here to shoot down. You have a lot of cover, and if you have control over this small alleyway as well, you can jump up to here onto this wall and you can shoot down as well if the occasion calls for it. Of course, you are very, well, you're kind of a duck on a target range if you stand on this fence, but you get the point. You can jump over here and sometimes get the surprise onto people taking cover on this side of the wall. That is always a thing as well. So defenders, hold this as much as you can. Now attackers, this is why I said hold, well, get control of this high garden area. If you can stand here and shoot down into that house or into that alleyway, you pretty much limit where the defenders can go. So they're going to be stuck together, like their front lines will be contesting the points and you will be holding it here. Now, I did point out in the theory video, this is what you don't do. So push into this building. As you can see, very small, very cramped. So as an attacking team, if you get stuck in here against a blaster, if you go against a Bomb King and Willow, you really are stuck. There's only one way in, one way out. So only push around here when you are 100% certain you can do this. Push through and you can flank around. So use the high gardens to pressure out the defenders here. That allows you to maybe push through the houses. And hopefully you're going to get past this very next choke point and get ready for the last line of defense. Just to preface the last line of defense, I wanted to show you this particular flank route that is only available to characters with flight. So Drogos and Eevee will find this the easiest, Willow as well if you're using your ultimate, and Droxus you can do it. I was able to do it when I was practicing earlier, but I couldn't do it consistently enough to record, so I'm using Drogos. Right. Here's the location. It's the alleyway where to the left you have the main houses and the point houses over there. If you play the map, you know what I mean. You have this balcony here. Doesn't really seem like much. It's just an environmental hazard. But if you have flight, then you can do this. Jump off the balcony. Fly around. And lo and behold, you're up here. You are on the high ground for the defending team. That is a pretty nasty flank route, and not many people expect it as well. So just something to bear in mind if you do have that option. Again, so champions that can do this are Drogos, Eevee, Willow, and Androxus. If you time your dashes right, you can get up here. And of course, just to highlight it, this is where they do the play of the game portrait as well. I just think it's really cool. See, but yeah, that's this little flank route. Now back to the last line of defense. So here we are, the last line of defense. Defenders, backs against the wall. You guys know the drill. Backline damages, supports need to stay up here. Use these silos for cover, and your front lines are going to be down contesting that point. So we'll shoot down and help the guys out. I would recommend not dropping down in a lot of circumstances. If you do find yourself getting a pick onto a few attackers and maybe making it a 5v3 or 5v2, then by all means drop down and push the attackers back. But for the most part, you're going to stay up here. If you drop down in a 5v5 fight, that's pretty much game over. You're just an instant death there, and you might cost your team at the push. So attackers, unless you have a way of getting up onto that high ground, there's not really much you can do apart from just being a bit coordinated. So get your damage onto the backline, make them take cover. As soon as the backline take cover, either behind the silos or in spawn, then you focus all of your fire on those front lines. If you can burn down one of the front lines or get both if they're running two, then that means defenders have to drop down to try and contest the points. And as we've just said, if they drop down, they should be very easy pickings for you as an attacking team. And that's kind of really all I can say about this, unless you can get onto that high ground. But that is going to be how to defend, and also for the attackers to break through it. So that wraps up the practical side of this video. Before we get into the tips and tricks, I want to address something here about the buildings. Champions with flight and vertical mobility can land on top of some of the tallest buildings in the map. And this is mainly applying to the point house and also that lab area towards the defense as well. You know, the really tall buildings. You can actually land on them, and this is actually a bug with the map, and a really notorious one that has plagued Brightmarsh since its release. I only bring this up because if you were to play in any community tournaments and you get caught landing on a roof and using an ability, this is actually breaking the rule. It's exploiting the collision with the top of the building. You shouldn't be able to do that. So I'm letting you know this so you can try and avoid it. It's a really bad habit to get into, especially if you rely on it. If you get caught in a competitive environment doing it, then you're more than likely going to concede the map, or maybe even get disqualified completely. So the best thing to do is just don't attempt it. It's not worth. Don't try and over rely on it, and also just play the map. But this does not apply to the smaller buildings. The ledge around the point house, that's perfectly fine, and also the smaller buildings over towards the houses where they're like little squat flat top buildings. You can land on them. That's absolutely fine. It's just the tallest buildings in the map, especially that point house. So with that disclaimer out the way, I want to give you some additional advice and help you master Brightmarsh. The description of the map in the original patch notes is quite on the nose here, and it really is a very tug-of-war style of action. So be prepared for some long drawn-out fighting, and I would recommend looking at your team composition. If you out-sustain the enemy team, so maybe you have an additional healer, you have champions that have a healer as part of their kit, or you maybe have more front lines than the other team, then you're going to win these fights the longer they go on. If you're on the opposite end of this, and let's say you have 3 damage healers, or you have a support that doesn't really do that much upfront healing, so Genos would be a really good example here, then you need to use that aggression. So you really need to take the fight to the enemy team, because if that fight gets drawn out, you can't stay in the fight long enough, then they can. So flank around the docks, flank around the houses, just get a pick if you can. If you can get a key pick onto the support or one of the front lines, then you immediately take control of that fight 5v4, because you just have so much damage. Brightmarsh is a small map, not going to deny that. Therefore, it's one of the easiest maps to restrict the enemy team. Say you win that point fight, and even better, you ace them. Then push up. Leave one person on the point, and then set up around the high gardens and also the small mini houses on the left hand side. What this means is the defenders are going to have to fight through you to get to the point. And here's the kicker about it. You are going to be fighting these 4 versus 5. Someone has got to stay behind on that point, and it's more than likely going to be a support, for instance. The damage in the front lines are much more useful up front. So just don't get greedy. You just want to hold off the defenders. And let's say you do hold them off successfully, all of a sudden you capture the point and the cart starts moving. You actually take it past the first and second choke points if you do the zoning correctly. think about how much time that's going to save you. Brightmarsh, you only have, I think it's just above a minute, above 2 minutes to push in that card. So you can direct a lot more time, a lot more resources into breaking through that last line of defense rather than slugging it out in the first and second choke points. Just remember, double-edged sword, same with Frog Isle. Don't push up too far. Don't get greedy. If you get caught out, all of a sudden that team that you were trying to zone might be able to steamroll you and throw you back the other way, and all of a sudden they start to zone you out, and you might be on the receiving end of this. So just hold them off and play it safe. Do your job, don't overstep, and you're going to be fine and get some really easy wins on Brightmarsh. With all that in mind, let's look at some recommended champions, and these are not necessarily the only viable champions on this map. I just think that their playstyle and kit really complements the map well. So for the frontline role, you cannot go wrong with picking Inara on this map. Firstly, she is a very difficult tank to remove off the point because of her damage reduction and increased healing when you use the Earthen Guard ability. Let's also talk about that wall. The Impasse is a multi-purpose tool in Inara's kit. She can create cover where there simply isn't any, and you can also block off certain routes, especially in that point house. You put up the wall in any of the doorways and it completely blocks off all entry. It can also be used to trap people who are stuck inside of that house. Another trick you can do is actually really sneaky. You can get up onto the defender's high ground using that wall, and I'm actually going to cut to the video to explain this a lot better. So here we are on the ground with Inara. This is the last line of defense point from the video. You should recognize it. So here's a trick you could do with Inara. You can use her wall as it is a terrain. Go to this side, aim down, and put the wall below you. And you can jump up. The wall is a piece of terrain, so you can stand on it. And it is a really useful trick you can use. And all of a sudden, your immobile front line is now on the defender's high ground. You can also bring an ally up with you as well, and it can just make defender's life an absolute living hell. But just Inara in general, you don't even have to be up against the wall to do this. You can do this in general. You stand on your Impasse. But yeah, that's a little trick with Inara, which I hope will be of great use to you on Brightmarsh. And back over here, so we're going to talk about damage dealers, and it is by no coincidence that the champion released alongside Brightmarsh would excel on this map. We're going to talk about Willow. Narrow corridors and tight corners are even more dangerous thanks to Willow. Firstly, she's a blaster, and she also has access to the seedlings and the dead zone. You can cut off access to certain areas and make life a living hell for any frontline or, well, any champion actually that just wants to heal up, because the dead zone reduces, well actually no, it doesn't reduce, it stops all healing for as long as you are in the dead zone, and then also for an additional second once you're out of the dead zone. So supports, just keep an eye on where that dead zone is. You don't want to have your front line start randomly spamming BGS, oh, he needs healing, or what is this support doing? This support isn't healing me, and you're just stood there in a dead zone. I can't literally heal you. It's literally impossible right now. Please walk out of it. Okay, a bit of a tangent. You also have the seedlings as well, which can spell pretty much doom to any champion that actually get caught within both detonations of the ceilings. Of course, you have the initial one, and you have the 4 little mini ceilings as well. So you really need to keep an eye out for them and try not to get caught out. Willow also has a reliable source of vertical mobility thanks to her flutter and also her faith flight, so she can land onto the low buildings and also the ledge. So this is the low buildings I pointed out early on in the video next to the houses, and also that ledge that goes around the top of the point house itself. She can jump onto there and shoot down onto the enemy backline and really help out. So she really excels here. I know that I've already recommended Grover for another map, so I'm playing that duplicate card here for a good reason. As with Stone Keep, Brightmarsh is a map that also features a lot of grouped up close quarter skirmishing, and the ability to rotate from different sides of a very narrow map make Grover a champion not to be taken lightly thanks to that Vine Toss. The AoE heals, a very simple playstyle, and also the sheer amount of healing output that he can put out for relatively low effort cannot be ignored. A great tip I have for playing Grover here is if you can put him on the ledge around the point house that I highlighted earlier. Grover's healing is pure AoE. It can go through walls, so you can actually stand on that ledge and heal people who are in the point house while you are completely, well, sheltered on the cover. No one can really get to you if you're on that ledge and there's no enemies flanking you around. Just remember to press that heal button whenever it is off cooldown. So also the Axes as well. If you're on high ground and with skirmishers, you can throw the axes into the courtyard. You're getting the increased damage boost. It's not as strong as on Stone Keep, where Grover really shines, but I still think Grover can really excel on this map. So, a flat map where most of the action takes place in corridors means that flanks with no inert vertical mobility can thrive here. I can make an argument for a couple of flanks that can work on this map, but I'll give the thumbs up to Talus. Due to his insane amount of DPS, he can lock down entire buildings by his presence alone. If he gets a jump on you, then it is certain doom and a trip back to the spawn. A punch that can add to the burst damage, plus a whack-a-mole style of play by going back and forth with his teleport. His ult, an interesting one, but insanely useful for isolating a single target in unbreakable CC for a second or two, as well as getting back into the fight. On a map where any number advantage is important, Talus can pick off weak targets with ease thanks to ultimate, and also get out of trouble with the snap of his fingers. And that covers it for today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed it, and please leave a like if you learned something new. Let me know down in the comments section what tips you have for mastering Brightmarsh, or if there's anything you feel that I have missed. The YouTube content is back up and rolling. The next videos I will be doing will cover Jaguar Falls and Fish Market. I hear you with the other video ideas as well. I love the idea of doing a counter series, something titled How to Counter X, where we will look at how to deal with troublesome snipers, how to deal with flanks, how to deal with death balls. I've only really addressed them briefly in the previous video, so it'd be really cool to actually shine a specific spotlight on them. I also have plans for the more discussion style videos as well, where we'll maybe be looking at how to build loadouts, looking at team compositions themselves, and also champion guides. I really want to do these, and there's a lot to do, so it's kind of start figuring out exactly how I'm going to format them, but all of that is going to be on the way in the future. So please, if you're feeling grateful, please leave a subscribe as well to be completely up to date with all the new videos. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you back in my classroom next time. Class dismissed.